Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our multi-tester review of the Adidas Supernova Prima. So here's your quick rundown of the key Adidas Supernova Prima details. It's best classed as a max cushion daily trainer in the mould of shoes like the New Balance 1080 V13, Puma Magnify Nitro 2 and the Saucony Triumph 22. It's priced at £160 in the UK or $160 in the US, putting it in more expensive than the Supernova Rise and the Supernova Solution, but cheaper than a lot of other max cushion style daily trainers. It's got an 8mm drop with stack heights measuring in at 37.5mm at the heel and 29.5mm at the forefoot. In a UK men's size 8, it weighed in at 280 grams, making it a slightly heavier shoe than the Supernova Rise for comparison. At the upper, it's an engineered mesh one with a pretty skinny gusseted tongue and ample padding at the heel to provide comfort and added support. Adidas employs its Peba-based DreamStrike Plus foam at the midsole with more in place at the heel and forefoot compared to what we got in the Supernova Rise. That's combined with wide support rods to counter that Peba bounce and keep things nice and stable. Those support rods are surrounded by a light traction outsole that's designed to suit mid and forefoot strikers, focusing grip in those areas to keep things light and to make sure it will also grip strong.
Comes the fit of the Adidas Supernova Prima. I've had the right amount of room in my normal running shoe size. I've got a UK 9 here, which is a US 9.5 for Adidas. It's the same size I have across most of Adidas's shoes, and it fits me really well in terms of the amount of room I have in the toe box. Have had a little bit of concern with the heel counter and the general padding around the back of the shoe, which has irritated my Achilles tendon on a couple of runs. Like, it's not doing it every run. It's not the worst offender for this, and I sometimes am a bit sensitive to this, but it is a little bit more, I'd say, rigid and padded than the heel counter on something like the Adidas Supernova Rise, and I prefer a little bit more of a relaxed fit at the back of the shoe, but hasn't been a huge problem, and overall I would say you should stick to your normal running shoe size.
So in terms of fit, I've got the Supernova Prima in a UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size, and that is the same shoe size that I had at the Supernova Rise in, which I didn't have any real issues in terms of that fit. I think it's a similar story here with the Prima. I think going true to size has been fine for me. I've got pretty skinny, narrow feet, and I feel like the fit of this shoe really is about kind of hugging and supportive in the right places. It does really kind of wrap a lot of material around, the entirety of your foot. It's quite heavily padded in the heel. The space up front of the toes has been good on the front and the side of my toes. Maybe it's a touch more roomy than the Supernova Rise, but I don't think there's a huge amount in it. When you get pretty standard fair lacing here, there's a slightly skinnier tongue compared to the Supernova Rise here as well, but that hasn't kind of moved about. The lockdown has been generally good for me. So I think a very no-nonsense fit, I would say, with the Supernova Prima. For me, I was very happy going true to size in this shoe. I wouldn't feel like I'd have to go kind of half a size down or half a size up. So I think for most people, going true to size should be absolutely fine.
So a quick word on fit then. I've got just about a thumb's width at the end of the toe box here. It's not the most roomy in terms of lengthwise here. You do get good wiggle room across the top of this kind of flexible mesh uppers. There is, wiggle there that makes them sort of feel sort of spacious-ish, although going back down into where the big toe knuckle and the little toe knuckles are here, they are quite narrow across this section of the foot. And overall, the feeling around this section is quite snug, even though you do have a bit of that flex. Coming back into the laces, I had to work quite hard to get these laces to sit right across the top of my midfoot and to get the tongues to feel right. I have to tug at them quite a lot to get this bit here to feel comfortable on the foot. Overall, though, once they're locked in and laced down, they do feel comfortable, and that is a nice hold across that section. Some people, if you've got particularly wide feet, might find this bit comes up a little snug, a little narrow. Moving into the heel collars, you've got nice kind of plush padded heel collars here that hold really well. Does come up a little bit high, but because that's nice and soft, I didn't have any digging in under the Achilles. The tongues come up a little bit high here as well. They're fairly sort of wrapping. There is a big bulge here to take off the lace pinch. So overall, though, no slipping in the heels. I had good lockdown across the midfoot and just about enough wiggle room in the toe box. And I would say, therefore, go true to size unless you've got particularly long or wide feet, in which case you might find them a little bit narrow. You might want a little bit extra length in the toe box.
So in terms of my running experience, I've done over 50k in Supernova Prima, and I've tried to focus on the types of runs that ultimately Adidas says this shoe is designed for. So it's kind of saying this is a shoe for kind of base runs, long runs, but I've also tried to kind of up the tempo in this shoe as well too, because I felt like you could kind of do that in the Supernova Rise as well, and the similarities between the two shoes, those are definitely there. I mean, there's definitely some characteristics where I do think changes the experience a little bit on the Supernova Prima compared to the Rise, but I think, yeah, ultimately it's a shoe that is designed for people that want comfort, protection, a very stable feel, maybe their first shoe, maybe a shoe they're going to use for all their runs. I think the big thing for me here, the thing that kind of really stands out for me is, obviously you are getting that kind of DreamStrike Plus midsole there, which is similar to Supernova Rise. It's a Peba-based foam, so you know it has similar materials from kind of Adidas's kind of racing shoes, but ultimately that foam is a little bit denser. I think when you combine it with what you're getting in a relatively broad outsole, the support rods that you're getting here, that kind of stabilizes and kind of reins thing in a little bit, you know, in terms of, you know, there is some bounce there in the rides, but it's pretty controlled. There's enough to make it an enjoyable shoe to run in, but I think it definitely is reined in a little bit. I found the experience, it kind of varied for me on runs. I think some runs I felt that bounciness a little bit more. Other runs it wasn't as present for me across different paces. I think the biggest difference for me is that having more or better spread of that midsole from the kind of heel to forefoot makes it a more balanced shoe to run in. I think particularly I felt more comfortable running a little bit longer in this shoe, and I felt well protected throughout the shoe. And I think that is the most noticeable change for me in my experience, having that better spread of that DreamStrike Plus midsole, which I think I'm still a little bit on the fence about whether I think it's really stand out, but I do think there's some nice qualities about it. And I think in the Supernova Prima, I think I've appreciated it a bit more than I have or did in the Supernova Rise. And I think for shorter kind of easy runs, it's been absolutely fine. I think for moderate pace runs, it has been fine as well too. When I've tried to up the tempo, it's been okay in places, but I don't think it's really where you're going to kind of use the shoe. It really is about logging a lot of time in your feet and, you know, just being comfortable and protective and giving you a little bit of an, you know, enjoyment in that ride as well too, in that bounce. But it's very much, as I said, I think a little bit reined in. Outsole wise, it's been generally fine. I see, you know, this is a shoe that, as I kind of said, it's really kind of aimed at kind of midfoot strikers. I'm a heel foot striker, so there's not a huge amount of that protection in the outsole at the heel. That is where I've seen a little bit of wear in my running time, not huge amounts, but I think, you know, from a heel striking point of view, I would be a little bit concerned about that. Mine, from a gripping and traction point of view, it's been fine. I have wandered a little off-road on it, but I would ultimately stay kind of to roads and pavements in the shoe. I think that's where it's best designed for. So from that point of view, it's been absolutely fine. So yeah, it's felt like a very solid shoe to run in overall. I think as I've, you know, stuck to the types of runs I think Adidas has kind of aimed this at, I think that's where it's worked best. Is it the most thrilling kind of, you know, cushioned kind of daily trainer style shoe? Possibly not, but I think in terms of being a very solid, dependable shoe, I think it offers a lot on that front. And I think more so, I think I've enjoyed my time in this a little bit more than the Supernova Rise, and I felt like I could use this for a bigger variety of runs, or particularly from a distance point of view. So yeah, pretty solid overall experience running in the Adidas Supernova Prima.
So I've done just over 50k of running in the Adidas Supernova Prima, I'm going to say Prima, and I think for the most part it's been a pretty good shoe. I think it's not exactly a wow shoe. It's not one you pull on and you think, oh, that's really springy or exciting or incredibly soft or anything like that. This DreamStrike cushioning, I think, is very balanced, same as it was with the Supernova Rise. It's got probably a firmer feel than most of the very cushioned shoes on the market as a result, but it is comfortable. It's not a shoe I found that was at all harsh on long runs or anything like that. And it is a shoe I think you probably grow to like a bit more over time. That's certainly how I felt about it. It's not that I think it needs time to break in. I think the foam feels similar now to it did when it was fresh out of the box. It's just a shoe you grow to like by running in it a lot, because it is very much a workhorse of a daily trainer. It's a shoe you're going to pull on for a lot of runs, lots of easy miles, just churning them out, and you know, it's going to give you a nice balanced, stable ride underfoot. That stability is something I definitely noticed about the shoe. I'd say, like, it's not built to be a stability shoe, but you've got quite a naturally stable design without having some of the features that are becoming quite common in max cushion shoes, like a very wide base or sidewalls of foam or anything like that. It's just a fairly firm foam, got a naturally stable shoe that isn't very wobbly underfoot despite the high stack of foam you have here. I found it was a pretty smooth shoe as well, probably a little bit smoother than the Supernova Rise, with this elongated heel design in particular, which as a heel striker does help me kind of flow through my foot strike a little bit better. So that I found that at a range of paces, like it's certainly better for me at easier paces. I have picked up the pace a little bit in the shoe, and it just feels a bit heavy and blocky for that. The foam doesn't give you a huge amount back. It is at quite a neutral, balanced platform you can push against, so I think it is a little bit more versatile than some of the really soft cushion shoes out there. It feels a little bit more akin to something like the Triumph 21 or the Puma Magnify Nitro 2 on that front, but it's not something that gives you a load back. It wouldn't be a shoe that I'd personally use as a do-it-all shoe myself, but if you like a cushion shoe to do all your runs in, I think this is probably up there as one of the better options. I was a little concerned about the fact that the heel rubber doesn't extend all the way to the back of the shoe. You just kind of got this foam here, and as a heel striker I was worried that I'd see a bit more wear and tear, or maybe the grip wouldn't be as good, but those concerns haven't been borne out by my run experience so far. Like the durability seems fine back there, the grip's been very good. I took it for a nice wet run today and it was all fine, so I don't think you're really losing out by not having this rubber extend all the way back. I was also worried this rubber might be a little bit slappy because of the slightly kind of crystal feel here, and I think it probably does mute the foam a little bit, but hasn't been too loud or anything like that, or created any kind of harshness as I snap through from heel to toe. So yeah, all round I think it's a well put together shoe that I've enjoyed running in. I think it will last a long time. Whether that's enough to really stand out in what is a very crowded market, I'm not really sure.
So in testing, I've run around 30 miles on the Adidas Supernova Prima. Most of those miles have come post-Comrades Marathon, where I've been running easy efforts with very, very battered legs, spending up to an hour on feet each time. That's been mainly on the road, apart from one set of faster track intervals where I just went to test that upper pace versatility of the shoe. Now, first up, let's talk general comfort. I found I had to fiddle a bit to get them feeling right on my feet. I've got really quite high insteps, and I have to wrestle the tongues a little bit here to get that section here across the midfoot at the back of the toes to sit happily. So they're not as instantly disappearing on step-in as something like the Brooks Ghost Max or like an On-Cloud Eclipse or a Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. But once they're on and wiggled into the right place, the overall comfort on the move is pretty good. That's boosted by the plush padded tongues and the heel collars here that hold well. You've got flexible mesh uppers here that are breathable enough, and overall comfort is good. When it comes to the ride, the Supernova Prima is noticeably more cushioned than the Supernova Rise, but it manages to boost the protection, I think, without feeling too high or too wobbly or cumbersome. I describe the ride as nicely balanced, and that bigger stack of DreamStrike Plus delivers good road taming softness that avoids being soggy, dull or lifeless. Now, I like a shoe that offers cushioning but with a bit of immediacy in the return, and I found that here. It also cushions without losing connection to the road overall. I'm a massive fan of the Saucony Ride 17 for this kind of ride, and I get a very similar vibe from the Supernova Prima. There's some return, but rather than shooting for overly energetic, punchy or springy, the Prima feels smooth with easy transitions and cushioning that's reliable and controlled. This is another soft edge daily trainer I'm sticking to my pile of happy cruisers. My miles felt cradled and protected with a wide platform to run off. Reliable stability, at least for a neutral runner like myself. For the up-tempo track intervals, they felt a bit heavier than I tend to go for. This isn't really what the shoe was designed for, so it's perhaps not surprising. However, I'd use these for runs up to half marathon pace, but beyond that I want something lighter, livelier and more agile. Now, the Supernova Prima will obviously draw comparisons with the recent Supernova Rise as well. That's £20 cheaper, that shoe, and I think overall I preferred the ride of the Prima. You can definitely feel the benefit of having more DreamStrike Plus underfoot, but I don't think you're sacrificing too much of the other benefits for it. If you looked at the Supernova Rise and wanted a bit more cushion, the Prima definitely ticks that box.
I've enjoyed running in the Adidas Supernova Prima. I don't necessarily think it's one of the very best cushion shoes out there for me, but I do think it's a shoe that a lot of runners will get on very well. I think if you buy the shoe, you're unlikely to be disappointed. I think it's going to deliver a solid ride for a variety of runs. It's going to last a long time. It's pretty good value as well in this area of the market, which has become quite inflated of late. There are shoes I think that are similar that I slightly prefer the ride of, like the Brooks Glycerin 21 or the Puma Magnify Nitro 2. I think there's a lot of similarities between those shoes and this shoe in terms of how they feel underfoot, the kind of natural stability, the slight element of versatility for a cushion shoe, and I just slightly prefer the rides of those shoes, but there's not a lot in it. I think this is a pretty enjoyable shoe all round. I think it's the best cushion shoe Adidas has made in quite a while as well. I think it's certainly better than the Ultra Boost's last few generations, and including the Ultra Boost Light. You've just got a better foam underfoot, just a shoe that feels better set up for running and ticks over a bit more nicely, and I think it's got a slightly better ride than the Supernova Rise as well, which is a little bit lighter and feels a bit nimbler on the foot and has a better upper for me in terms of being a bit looser and less structured. But I think they're quite similar, and this almost feels like the Brooks Glycerin to the Supernova Rise's Brooks Ghost, in that they're now quite similar shoes. You pay a little bit more for the shoe and you get a slightly better ride. So it's really kind of judging whether it's worth that extra bit of money you have to pay for it. I probably wouldn't go ahead and upgrade to the Supernova Prima myself, just because the Rise has that more comfortable upper for me, but I do think it has a better feeling underfoot, and is one that you'll get a little upgrade on if you do spend the extra money on it within Adidas's lineup. So I think if you are in the market for a cushion shoe and you really value softness in particular, then I think this isn't probably the shoe for you. Something like the New Balance 1080 V13 has a softer feeling, or even the Asics Gel Nimbus 26. But if you're looking for more of a cushion daily trainer, I think the Supernova Prima is a pretty good option out there. There are some I slightly prefer, but as I said, I don't think this is one that's going to disappoint lots of runners. It's a really well put together shoe and a step in the right direction for Adidas in this area, who I think has lacked a really strong cushion shoe to compete with other brands in the mould of the Supernova Prima.
So my verdict on the Adidas Supernova Prima is that it is a pretty solid kind of max cushion style daily trainer shoe. I think it is a shoe kind of best suited for easy to maybe kind of moderate paces, based on my experience. I think it's a good shoe if you are looking for kind of your first shoe. You want a shoe that's really going to be comfortable, is going to give you a little bit of fun in that ride as well too, and is going to kind of be protective as well. And I think all those kind of qualities there is ultimately what Adidas has kind of aimed to do with the shoe, and I think it kind of really delivers on that front. And I think if you stick to the types of runs that it kind of suggests for this shoe, I think you're going to get the best experience from it. My only real question mark probably is around the outsole durability, just from a kind of heel striking point of view. But I think if you're a midfoot striker, I think you're probably going to get on fine with it, and it is going to be a shoe that you can put in a lot of time. Is it the standout kind of max cushion daily trainer shoe that I have used? Possibly not, but I think it's kind of there and thereabouts. If it was, if I had a choice between the other shoes that kind of sit in this category, would it be the first shoe I'd grab? Possibly not, but I think I'd know I'd get a good experience from it, and I think that's the key thing here. Obviously, it's more expensive than the Supernova Rise, and I think it's worth spending a little bit more money. It's a bit of a shame, actually. There's two shoes here. I think probably you only need the one shoe, and I think the Supernova Prima would be the one I would go for and probably needs to exist. But I think in terms of the changes, in terms of the differences between the two shoes, I think the Supernova Prima just offers a little bit more of a polished experience and kind of housing that kind of new DreamStrike Plus foam. So yeah, very good experience. As I said, I think if you are looking for your first shoe that, as I said, is comfortable, has a little bit in that ride as well too, a little bit of bounce, and is very controlled and can be a shoe you can run easy and go longer in as well, then this is a shoe that can absolutely do it, and I think you're going to get a good experience going for this shoe.
Verdict then, and Adidas has been missing a capable cushion daily trainer in its lineup for a while now. The Supernova Prima definitely plugs that gap, and outside of Adidas's racier shoes, I think it might be my favourite shoe they've made for a while. It's comfortable, well balanced, with a protective cushion ride that's controlled and stable. There's plenty of plush comfort from the upper package here, and generally speaking, I found the fit solid, if a little bit snug in some places. But for easy, steady miles and for longer, slower clips, it's got everything I'd look for in a running shoe, and I enjoyed all of my test miles in the Prima. It does have some limitations. It's not as punchy as some faster tuned daily trainers like the Nova Blast 4, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, and that lack of top pace potential inhibits the versatility compared to those shoes. So even though it's cheaper, it maybe doesn't deliver as much all-run conquering value as those shoes. But up against the likes of the Asics Gel Nimbus 26, the New Balance 1080 V13 and the Saucony Ride 17, I think this shoe really holds its own. And if you're wondering whether to choose this over the Supernova Rise, I'd say that definitely boils down to whether or not you prefer a softer ride that offers more long haul protection, in which case it's probably worth paying the extra £20 for the Supernova Prima. If you like things firmer, more connected, the Rise offer more of that kind of ride, but overall I think the Prima is the better shoe.
Okay, so there you have it. That is our multi-tester take on the Adidas Supernova Prima. Now, if you've got any questions about the shoe that we haven't covered in this video, do let us know in the comments. If there are other shoes you want to see this compared to, then do let us know about that as well too. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.